Hello Internet, so nice to see you. Today we have a question on figured bass.
Hi, it's Maso. Doesn't the 6-5 chord generally referred to as the first inversion 7th chord? Similar to 4-3 as a second inversion, 4-2 is a third inversion of a 7th chord, with regards to figured bass. Thanks.
Wow, that's a lot of numbers, right? So let me explain how figured bass work very in short. So that's a bit of a reference video on how you understand figure bass. Now, the idea of those people is that they had, in Baroque music, they have all those shorthand notations so that they can play the chords behind the music and they can even improvise. Kind of like jazz notation works today. You have all those chord notation like C major 7, A minor 7, etc., etc., and then you can use them and then you can play them however you want. Same exactly is true for the figure bass. It's just a kind of a different notation because they put those numbers over a score. The score is typically the bass line. Today we think everything from the root of the chord, which is the note that gives the name to the chord. So from C major 7, we think the root is C and we build the major 7th chord on top. In figure bass, instead, they don't think about the root simply because the idea of the root of a chord was not invented or discovered yet. They are thinking everything from the lowest note, which is the bass. So it's not correct to talk about inversion, but those are exactly the modern thing, the thing that modernly we call inversion. But they were not thinking of those as inversion. For them, they were different chords. So how does it work? Well, you will typically have a piece of a score, okay? And typically you have the bass stuff, okay? If you don't know how to read, don't worry. I'm using only one note, okay? And you have this bass, and I'm gonna put a C note here. That's a C note, okay? And then either above or below that, they will put some numbers. Now, if you had nothing, okay, and by the way, we are in the key of C right now, okay? Because all those notes are always taken in the key unless there is some other indication. If they put nothing on top, this means not just play the C note, but play the C triad. So exactly C, E, G, okay? Because whenever there is no indication, they assume that they're playing the third and the fifth above the note. So this would be play this note, the third above and the fifth above. I know it sounds strange, follow me. This notation was evolved by different people using it, so it's not always perfectly consistent, okay? And then every musician does whatever they want with that. But there's just the note and nothing, okay, it means triad. In what today we will call the root position. If they put a 6 on top, that would be an interesting one. Remember, if nothing is specified, they always add the fifth and the third. But the fifth will conflict with the sixth because they're close by. So if you put the 6, what you intend is 6 and 3. Okay? Just 6 means 6 and 3. Which means the note 1/3 above and the note 1/6 above. If I take the C note, a third above I have E in the scale, and a sixth above I have E. Sorry, a third above I have E, and a sixth above I have A. Sorry about that. Okay, so a chord of the sixth, that we call it, or they will call it a sixth chord, okay, which is confusing for us today, would be the root, but the bass, the third, and the sixth. The notes here again are C, E, and A. So C is this note here. Then we have E and A and the C. Yes. This for us, it's an A minor in first inversion, an A minor with a bass of C. The translation to modern term is that if you just have the 6, that's a first inversion triad. With the idea that for them it will still be a chord in C. For us, that would be a chord in A, because we will call this an A minor with a bass of C. They will call this a C with a little sixth on top, because that's exactly what it is for them. There's a C at the base and a little 6 on top. Okay? So it's kind of a different way of thinking, and that's what makes it complex. Okay? So, but a chord of the 6 for them contains the 6 and the third. The next one you need to know is the 6/4 chord. Now the 6 conflict with the 5, so there is no 5, and the 4th conflict with the 3, so there is no 3. Okay, and so you take the note a 4th above and a 6th above. The 4th above is the F, and the 6th above is the A. So now you have C, F, and A. That's an F major chord in 2nd inversion. Okay, so the chord of the 6/4, 6/4, and it has to be put in vertical. It's a 2nd inversion triad. Okay, again, they will call these a C 6/4 because the lowest note is C, and then you put the 6 and the 4 on top. We will call this an F chord with a bass of C. Okay, because we think from the root, they think from the bass. That's why it's so confusing. But once you get past this problem, it's actually fairly easy because it tells you exactly what to play. On the guitar, it would be even easier. Play the lowest note and then play the 4th above and the 6th above. And you need to know if it's a major 6 or a minor 6 just by staying in key. Okay, but on the guitar, where we have all the intervals laid out on the strings, this would be even easier. There would be a much more natural way of doing it if we were taught this way. But we aren't. Okay, so those are the main one, the triads essentially. What do we call the triads? So notes, chords of 3 notes. If you put nothing, it's a triad in root position. If you put 6, it's a triad in 1st inversion, and this marks the bass. If you put 6/4, that's a triad in 2nd inversion, and that marks the bass, not the root. Can you do other chords? We definitely, of course you can. Remember, 3 and 5 are assumed unless there is a conflict. If you put a 7, you will have the 7th chord, the 7, the 3 and the 5. So you will have the C, which is the bass, the 3rd, which is the E, the 5th, which is the G, and the 7th, again staying in key, not the minor 7th, but the 7th in key, so 7 notes above in the scale, which is the B. So in this case, we will have a C major 7th, okay? Depending on what was the note, if it was the G note or the A note, etc., we will get the minor 7th, the dominant 7th, everything stays in key. Okay, so for them it's just the 7th chord built on the note indicated in the key indicated. All the keys are always assumed. You need to know all your keys to understand this. So if you have a 7th, it's simply 7th chord in root position. Okay, simple as that. It starts to get more complex when we look at what today we call the inversion of the chord, the 7th chord, okay? Which again, for them were completely independent chord. The first one is the 6/5. So they write 6 and 5. Why? Because if they write only 6, we don't play the 5 because it conflicts. So they write the 5 to tell you that there must be both those notes. And they assume that you're also going to play the 3rd. Now, an important note here, okay, which I already made, but it's important. It's you don't have to play all the notes. You can play only some of those notes. This is the space of consonant note in that moment. But you can play less. Exactly like in today's jazz music, you can indicate a C major 7 and not playing the 5th of that chord because you don't have enough notes, enough fingers to play them, okay? You can play only a few of those notes, okay? But the 3rd is assumed. And so the chord of the 6/5 will be from the C, go up 3 notes and find the E. Go up also 5 notes and find the G. And go up another 6 notes always from the C and find the A. So you would have the notes C, E, G, and A. Okay? Now, those two may be close by. Okay, so if I'm playing something like this, right now I'm playing C, G, and A. Or they can be spaced apart, so I can play C, A, and G at the higher octave. I can put the E in, so I have C, A, E, G. Or I can put take it around the other way, so C, G, A, E, okay? Those numbers here don't indicate the order of the notes, but just what notes you can play. Then you can rearrange them however you want, as long as you keep the bass as the bass, so as the lowest note, okay? A 6/5 chord, which assumes also the 3rd, is what today we will call 6/5, the 7th chord in 1st inversion. okay? It's a long road to get there for us, but for them it's the short road because they are just thinking, suppose I'm a piano player, my left hand plays the bass, my right hand plays the third, the fifth, and sixth over that bass. And they were trained in thinking in this kind of intervallic way, just like with the guitar players are. So if you know where is the fifth and where is the sixth, and you just play both of them and you play a third maybe at the higher octave, boom, you have the chord immediately. And you can even take it through to the whole scale, as long as you adjust for major and minor sixth and all these kind of things, okay? So totally doable, very convenient to know. 6/5, okay? The next one is the 4/3 chord, quite rare actually in Baroque music. Now comes an interesting thing. The 4 it's important, the 3 is there because if you don't put it, you will just play the fourth because the third conflict with the fourth. At this point, it's where the inconsistencies start. They say, I have a 3 and a 4, and so of course I'm also gonna play a sixth. Now for us, this of course sounds like what? Completely out of the blue. For them, not so much, because the moment you put a fourth in the chord, in their style, you can always play the sixth. That's something very typical of kind of Baroque style. Sounds good though. So there is a sixth assumed. Occasionally, when they write for students, they write 6/4/3, but when you find 4/3, you can always put a sixth. Okay, if you do that from the C note, what's gonna happen? You go C, third above you find the E, fourth above the C you find the F, and the sixth above you find the A. So now you have C, E, F, A. Rearrange those notes, F, A, C, E. That's an F major 7th in our modern parlance, okay, in second inversion. So again, just because we stay in the scale, this chord could be is major 7th now, but from another note it would be minor 7th or dominant 7th. But the 4/3 chord, at the end of the day, once you get it, the 4/3 chord, it's a 7th chord in second inversion, with the 5th at the base, okay? Not much used. Much more used is the 2/4 chord, okay? Now they put the 2 to indicate, and both 4 and 2 conflict with the 3, so you don't use the 3. And the 6th is understood. There is a 6, every time there is a 4, a 6 is understood. Okay? Again, not really consistent, depending on the exact musician who's writing this, but so you have a 2, a 4, and a 6th from C. The 2 is D, a second above. The 4th is F, and the 6th is A, so you have C, D, F, A. Rearrange the notes, D, F, A, C. It's a D minor 7th. This is a D minor 7th chord with the 7th in the bass, what today we call a 3rd inversion chord. So, the 4/2 chord, okay, let me circle them this way so we don't confuse them. A 4/2 chord is the 7th chord in 3rd inversion, which means with the 7th at the base. This is used a lot in the Baroque style. It is less today, and wrongly so, honestly. It sounds so good. I mean, yeah, but think of it as a C major chord. That's the D minor with the bass of C, and it just leads beautifully to other chords. I mean, it's just, and then you can do a lot of things on there. Okay. Anyway, now whenever they want to go out of key, they don't tell you the new key. They don't write strange things. I mean, today we will write, I don't know, if you go out of key, you don't even mark if you go out of key. You just write the chord in the new key. Okay? If you're in the key of C and you want to move to the key of D, you would just write the chord, I don't know, D major or A major, and you will move to the key of D. In their style, they don't do that. In their style, they will just put sharps and flats on the note that changes. Okay? So one typical thing to do, for instance, would have to have the C note, don't put anything here, then put another C note here, where you put a 2 and a sharp 4th. Okay? So, what would be that? That would be a C major triad, C, E, G, that will be a 2, 4, 6 understood chord. So the 2 is the D, the 4th is sharp, so the sharp 4th of C is F sharp, the 6 is A. So essentially you have a D7 with a bass of C, which will be this. From here you will typically go to a G chord in first inversion, that they will not call it a G chord, they will put a B note and write a 6 on top, because it's a G chord in first inversion. Okay. Again, if you know something about music theory and you've studied all the chords, I would say that modernly, you're much faster in thinking G chord in first inversion. But if you were studying things this way and applying them directly on the instrument, because this was supposed to be applied directly on the instrument so that you can see the intervals all the time, this way of thinking would be much faster for you. If you want to study this, it will take a bit of time to switch your mindset from the root central thinking from the bass central thinking. But I mean, it's totally doable, and it could be pretty useful, though nobody uses this notation anymore, even if it's useful, okay? It's kind of foreign to us at this point. The point is now you know what the numbers mean. There are a few more chords which are not inversion, but could be other things, because at the end of the day, they have also suspended chords and a number of other things, and they always mark them from the lowest note and the intervals from the bass. Okay, and they completely ignore the idea that some of those chords are inversion of each other. In their style of music, all those different inversions for them are completely different chords. Okay, even if the notes are the same, it's different than what we think today. For them, the bass line is fixed, and typically in Baroque music, they would have a fixed bass line and they would improvise chords and melody on top. Today we do something different in music. If you study jazz, for instance, you have a melody, which is the melody of the song, and the chords. The bass line could be improvised. So it doesn't make sense for us to think from the bass, because the bass line could be different than the original. Because we want to concentrate more on the melody. Okay? Advantages and disadvantages are that in the jazz way, so melody plus chords, you are playing that song, and you know that you're playing that song. That's the melody, that's the chords, you can arrange them however you want, but it's that song. In the Baroque way, this was not one song. Any bass line would have been a pattern to improvise several different songs. Like the blues progression would be today, you can improvise several different songs on top. One of those things would be a whole complete piece of music, and then you can, by changing the speed, the dynamic, the exact timing, the chords on top, the melodies, etc., you improvise new music on top every time. That was the concept of the time. Okay? Again, for us today, it doesn't make sense, because since bass players improvise things that today, we cannot tie them down to a specific bass line. So, two different kinds of thinking that both lead to improvisation. So that's a little review on how thorough bass or basso continuo works. Okay, there's much more to be said about that, and the important mindset difference. That's why when I talk about this, I don't like talking about inversion. Inversion are a later invention. They're not wrong. Though a number of Baroque musicians like Johann Sebastian Bach and his son Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach wrote that they didn't like at all the idea of inversion, and it was misleading. And it was for that kind of music. For us today, it's kind of a useful concept. Okay? So that's the historically correct thing. Should you learn this? Honestly, it's fun if you want to learn it. And it can open the door to a lot of interesting music. But you don't have to. Okay? The important point is that it really makes the intervals explicit, and then can help you understanding better your fretboard. That's one thing you can do about that. Another thing to understand better your fretboard is to take my course, Complete Chord Mastery. Boom! I'm putting a sale right in because it's the internet, okay? If you want to learn your harmony on the guitar better, I have this course called Complete Chord Mastery. Come, take it. If you have questions, just write me and be happy to answer. And yes, we also see things as intervals from the bass and from the root. It's useful because it's more the language of the fretboard. And with this, thank you very much. This is Tommaso Zilli of mysteryforguitar.com, and until next time, enjoy!